Welcome to Monroe County Schools volunteer training. This process will take about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. Thank you for your willingness to serve in our schools. This presentation will provide you with an overview of procedures that are required for those who wish to volunteer in Monroe County Schools. In accordance with state law, all persons wishing to serve in a volunteer capacity in Monroe County Schools must complete a mandated child abuse training session. In addition to the training session, all prospective persons must also consent to a complete background check and fingerprint check with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office at the cost of $20. Volunteers will be required to complete the training session each year and background checks every 2 years. A volunteer is anyone planning to attend or chaperone a school field trip anytime during the school year. This includes off-campus and overnight trips. Anyone who assists with students in a classroom setting on a one-on-one basis. Anyone who assists with PTO or PTA activities during the school day or volunteers on a regular or ongoing basis. Anyone who assists in the media center or parent room. A volunteer is a person that has direct interaction with students with or without adults present at all times. A visitor is anyone attending field day, anyone having lunch with their child, anyone visiting their child's class, grade, or school program during the day, anyone who is on campus for a short period of time with no supervisory responsibilities. A visitor must not have unsupervised, individual, and direct contact with students and is not involved in a supervisory role with students. Volunteer Code of Conduct, Part 1. As a volunteer, your role and responsibilities in the school are unique. Understand that your role is a supportive one. The teacher and principal are completely in charge. If the teacher leaves the room, the teacher in the next room assumes responsibility. You should not be left in charge of a classroom except for in cases of emergency crisis. Remember, volunteers are only permitted to work with students on school grounds and under the supervision of the public school staff. Maintain student confidentiality at all times. Do not discuss any student with anyone except teachers, counselors, and administrators. Don't make promises you can't keep. Avoid saying things like study hard and you'll definitely pass the test. Use good judgment and avoid any compromising situations. Work in a room with other people at all times. Never be left alone with one student out of view of other people. Always keep the door open. Strictly follow volunteer guidelines and discipline practices. Physical discipline is absolutely prohibited. Ask the teacher, program coordinator, or administrator for assistance with problematic student behavior. Follow the Monroe County Schools Child Abuse Reporting Protocol for any incident involving staff persons exhibiting physically abusive or sexually exploitive behavior towards a student. Volunteer Code of Conduct Part 2. Volunteers take pride in being professional. Maintain a constructive attitude. Don't make negative comments about the school, its personnel, or the students to other volunteers or individuals outside the school. Be prompt and consistent in your attendance. Teachers depend on volunteers and plan their work accordingly. Students depend on volunteers even more. Notify your school as soon as possible if you must be late or absent. Keep an accurate record of your attendance by signing in each day you volunteer. Establish and maintain good and frequent communication with your classroom teacher. Never be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Do not smoke on school grounds. Do not lend money, contribute, or solicit money for organizations while you are on school grounds. Do not use the internet inappropriately by going to websites that are not conducive to a professional or educational environment. Volunteer Code of Conduct Part 3. Health and safety are always important. Alert school staff immediately if any student has an accident while working with you. Refer any student in need of first aid or any type of medication to a teacher or the school clinic. Learn and follow emergency preparedness drill procedures and all school rules. Notify the principal of any accident you have on school grounds. A written form must be submitted to the principal within 24 hours. Alert the principal before volunteering in school if you have or have been exposed to a communicable disease. Should you need more information on this topic, please contact the Director of Student Services. According to Georgia law, persons volunteering in our schools are mandated to report suspected child abuse. If you have reasonable cause to believe that a child has been abused, you will be held responsible to report the suspicion using the correct protocol. What is reasonable cause? Reasonable cause is defined as a suspicion founded upon circumstances significantly strong to warrant a reasonable person to believe that something is true. Any time that a school system employee or volunteer has reasonable cause to believe that a student is a victim of abuse, they are required by board policy and state law to immediately report. All suspected abuse must be reported within 24 hours of hearing, observing, or suspecting abuse. The state grants immunity for any civil or criminal liability for the making of a report on the requirement that the report is made in good faith. Mandated reporters cannot delegate their responsibility to report to others. What happens if an incident of abuse is not reported? In Georgia, any person who is a mandated reporter and knowingly fails to report shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. In the Monroe County School System, any mandated reporter who knowingly and willfully fails to report child abuse is in violation of board policy. Recognizing types of abuse and neglect. For each type, we will look at both the physical indicators, or what you may see on the child's body, and the behavioral indicators, or how you may observe the child acting. The types of abuse and neglect are physical abuse, neglect or maltreatment, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and sexual exploitation. What is physical abuse? Physical abuse is injury or death inflicted upon a child by a parent or caregiver thereof by other than accidental means. Some physical indicators of physical abuse include unexplained bruises and welts on face, lips, mouth, torso, back, buttocks, or thighs. Bruises and welts may be in various stages of healing, clustered, or formed patterns. Bite marks, unexplained fractures or dislocations, unexplained burns or burns in the shape of an object, bald patches on the scalp, high or frequent incidents of accidents. Some behavioral indicators of physical abuse include extreme vigilance or watchfulness, frightened of parent or caregivers, afraid to go home, poor social interactions, bullying smaller children, acting out inappropriately with dolls or stuffed animals, poor self-concept or low self-esteem. What is neglect or maltreatment? Neglect or maltreatment is the failure of a parent, guardian, or other caregiver to provide a child's basic needs: food, shelter, medical or dental, supervision, and clothing. This can also include failure to protect them from known risks of harm or danger. Some physical indicators of neglect or maltreatment include underweight, poor growth patterns, failure to thrive, poor hygiene, inappropriate dress, consistent hunger, evidence of no or poor supervision, unattended physical problems or medical or dental needs. Some behavioral indicators include begging, stealing or hoarding food in pockets or cubbies, extended stays at school, consistent fatigue, listlessness, or falling asleep in class, inappropriate seeking of attention, assuming adult responsibilities or concerns, reports that there is no caregiver. What is emotional abuse? Emotional abuse is a pattern of behavior that impairs a child's emotional development or sense of self-worth. Some physical indicators of emotional abuse include speech disorders, lags in physical development, failure to thrive, hyperactive or disruptive behavior. Some behavioral indicators of emotional abuse include habit disorders such as rocking, sucking, or biting oneself, conduct and learning disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders such as excessive hand washing, developmental delays, lack of self-help skills, negative statements about self, cruelty to others. What is sexual abuse? Sexual abuse is defined as using, persuading, including, enticing, or coercing any minor who is not that person's spouse to engage in any sexual act. Physical indicators of sexual abuse include difficulty in walking or sitting, torn, stained, or bloody underclothing, pain, swelling, or itching in genital area, pain upon urination, bruises, bleeding, or lacerations in external genitalia, sexually transmitted diseases, pregnancy in pre-adolescent girls, ages 10 to 12 years old. Some behavioral indicators of sexual abuse include obsessive genital contact, sexual knowledge beyond what is age appropriate, aggressive acting out, sleeping and eating disorders, wetting the bed, poor peer relationships, and unexplained aggression or fear. What is sexual exploitation? Sexual exploitation is sexual abuse or prostitution of a child by an adult involving payment in cash, food, shelter, or other forms of value to the child or third person. Sexual exploitation involves treatment of the child as a sexual or commercial object for activities such as prostitution, adult entertainment, pornography, and other forms of transactional sex where a child engages in sexual activity. Physical indicators of sexual exploitation include inappropriate clothing or dress, little or no eye contact, weight loss, unexplained bruises or other injuries, scars from past injuries, tattoos of names, nicknames, or gang affiliations. Some behavioral indicators of sexual exploitation include extreme vigilance or watchfulness, frightened of parents or caregivers, afraid to go home, poor social interactions, bullying smaller children, acting out inappropriately with dolls or stuffed animals, poor self-concept or low self-esteem. Employee abuse allegations. Examples of inappropriate employee-to-student interactions that could lead to an allegation of abuse, criminal charges, termination of employment, and/or certification revocation include, but are not limited to, yelling, screaming, cursing, name-calling, pushing, grabbing body parts, pulling chairs out from under student, kicking, tripping, allowing or encouraging students to fight, public humiliation, showing inappropriate video and print material, leading students down a hall in a physically inappropriate and forceful manner, looking up girls' skirts, flirting, writing graphic sexual notes or emails, inappropriate touching, any type of sexual relation or sexual interaction with students, lack of student supervision that leads to injury or harm. Child abuse reporting protocol for all mandated reporters. Trained volunteers should report suspected child abuse immediately, within 24 hours, to the school counselor or administrator by completing a child abuse reporting form and submitting it to the counselor. A copy of this form is located on the Monroe County Schools website and also in the counselor's offices. Volunteer badge. Once you have finished the volunteer training session, please visit the Monroe County Sheriff's Office to complete fingerprinting and background check. Photo ID and $20 fee due at the time of service. Cash or money order only. Once the Monroe County Sheriff's Office has cleared your background check, your name will be placed on the approved volunteer list at the Monroe County Board of Education. A badge will be printed, and you will be contacted via phone or email to let you know your badge is ready. Thank you for completing this volunteer training session. We greatly appreciate your service in our schools.